The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The Force screamed. Not a sound, not a vision. Something beneath both, a frequency that lived in the marrow, in the place behind the sternum where a Jedi kept the quiet. Ahsoka felt it from the bridge of the tribunal, 40,000 feet above Coruscant's burning skyline, and she knew the shape of it the way she knew her own heartbeat. A star going out. Not death. Something worse. She was moving before she understood why, down the gangway, past Captain Rex's outstretched hand, past the shape of the decision she was making and what it would cost. And then, she was in a ship. And the ship was in hyperspace. And there was nothing in her head but the pull of that wound in the Force, and the name she couldn't stop saying inside it. Anakin, Mustafar, the lava bank. Dusk. If dusk could exist on a world where the sky was always burning, the heat reaches her before the ship does. It presses through the hull like a living thing, thick with sulfur and ash, with the iron-copper smell of superheated stone. Padmé's Naboo yacht sits 40 meters upslope, its ramp still extended. He came here alone, she realizes. He came here to do something she wasn't supposed to see. She crests the ridge at a run. Below her, on a narrow shelf of black rock above a river of fire, Anakin Skywalker is burning. Not metaphor. Not the Force. He is on fire, his legs, what remains of them, trailing flame from the lava-adjacent bank he dragged himself to, the superheated gases doing their slow, patient work on everything the fall left intact. He is still moving. She will think about that later. The fact that he is still moving, still trying to crawl towards something, and she will not know whether that is strength or the last convulsion of a man who has forgotten how to stop fighting. Obi-Wan stands above him on the slope. He is speaking. His voice carries up to her in fragments, Chosen One and the Prophecy and Brother, and the words are not the voice of a Jedi Master delivering a verdict. They are the words of a man bleeding out through his composure, each one costing him something he will not get back. You were the Chosen One. His shoulders do not move. His hands do not shake. Only his voice betrays him, that single hairline fracture in the granite. It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them. Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. Below him, Anakin's head lifts. The face that turns up the slope is not the one she trained beside for 3 years. The skin on the left side is already blistering, already blackening at the edges. The yellow of his eyes, Sith eyes. She has to say it. Sith eyes, lit from beneath by the glow of the lava field. His mouth opens. The sound that comes out is not a monologue. It is not a villain's declaration. It is 3 words torn up from somewhere that has forgotten it can hurt. I hate you. The silence after it is 3 seconds long. Obi-Wan does not answer. It is in that silence that he sees her, turns, registers her at the ridge, and takes 2 steps up the slope with a speed that has nothing to do with the Force, and everything to do with instinct, placing himself between her and the sight of Anakin below. His hand finds her arm. Ahsoka. His grip is firm. Don't. That is not him anymore. She looks at his face. The serenity there is the most frightening thing she has encountered today, and she felt the Jedi Temple die through the Force an hour ago, 40,000 feet above it. He is your brother. She pulls free. The ash bank is steeper than it looks. Her boots find no purchase. The top layer of fine gray powder gives way immediately, dropping her into a sliding half-run down the slope, the heat rising fast, pressing against her montrals like a hand trying to push her back. The lobes of her head-tail's register temperature changes with a sensitivity that was never meant for environments like this. Every step closer is a new register of pain, sharp and specific and impossible to ignore. She ignores it. The rock shelf beneath Anakin is solid enough to hold her weight. She hits it at a crouch, one knee down, and the heat here is a different thing entirely. Not ambient warmth but pressure, the lava river 8 meters below radiating upward with the patience of geology. Her eyes water. The air tastes of metal and burning. She reaches for the Force. Not for calm, not for clarity. She reaches for the brute mechanical fact of it. Air is a medium, Fire is a chemical reaction, and a chemical reaction requires oxygen. She finds the boundary of the flames eating at what is left of Anakin's legs, and she compresses. Drives the air out of that thin shell of space in short, rhythmic pulses, starving the combustion cycle one breath at a time. The technique is not elegant. It was not designed for this. The Force does not distinguish between the fire she wants to kill and the air Anakin is still trying to breathe. And every compression pulse that smothers the flames also hits him like a fist to the chest. He cries out, an awful broken sound. Nothing in it she recognizes, and his body arches. And she has to press her free hand against his chest to keep him from rolling off the shelf into the river below. She screams with the effort. She doesn't decide to. It simply comes out of her. The flames go out. The smell that replaces them is worse. Anakin's hands find her in the dark behind her closed eyelids. Not her hands, not her arms, but her throat, clamping down with the strength of a man who has nothing left but his reflexes and his rage. Dark side strength, the kind that doesn't stop when the body does. Her vision goes immediately bright at the edges. She does not pull back. She pushes in, drops her weight onto his chest, pins his remaining arm with her knee, gets her face close enough to his that she knows he can see her even through the yellow haze in his eyes. Anakin. Her voice is a rasp. The grip does not loosen. Anakin. It's me. It snips. The name does something. Not everything. Not enough. But something. The grip loosens by 2 degrees, not a release, a hesitation, and in the hesitation she gets her hand between his fingers and her throat, and she holds on, not pulling away, just holding, the way you hold a wire that is still live. His body gives out before his rage does. The arm drops. The adrenaline that has been holding him upright since the lava bank exits him all at once. And what is left is a man in shock, breathing in short, terrible pulls, each one audible, each one costing him. And she realizes she cannot hear the normal whistle of clear airways in that sound. Something is wrong with his throat, with his lungs, with the passage the superheated air has been moving through for however many minutes he has been lying here dying. Obi-Wan. She does not raise her voice. She does not need to. His airway. Footsteps on the ash bank. She does not look up. She gets her hands under Anakin's shoulders. He weighs more than he should, the prosthetic arm, the density of a man who has spent a decade as a weapon, and the slope above her is loose and steep, and every surface is either hot enough to blister or sharp enough to cut. She plants her feet and she pulls. He moves 6 inches. She pulls again. Behind her she hears Obi-Wan drop to his knees beside them. Hears the snap of a medpack opening. Hears him begin to work with the focused quiet of a man who trained as a field surgeon because the Republic asked him to, because the Order asked him to, because someone always had to know how. She pulls again. The slope rises. The heat presses down. Anakin's eyes open once, unfocused, the yellow fading at the edges into something she cannot name. His mouth moves. She thinks he says a name. She does not think it is hers. She doesn't stop climbing. 8 meters. 12. The ash bank crests beneath her boots, and the air above the ridge is fractionally cooler, and she does not put him down. Obi-Wan is beside her now, wordless, his hands taking Anakin's other side, and they move up the slope together in the silence that follows catastrophe. Behind them, Mustafar burns. Below them, on the yacht's ramp, the galaxy's last chance at a different ending lies between 2 people who are not sure, yet, whether they are saving him or simply refusing to let him go. The skiff was not built for this. It was a diplomatic courier vessel, clean lines, pale upholstery, the kind of craft designed to carry senators between orbital platforms without creasing their robes. The cargo hold where they lay Anakin down is 3 meters by 4, lit by a single strip of emergency amber, and the floor is smooth durasteel with no anchor points, no medical rails. Nothing to strap him to if he starts seizing. Ahsoka notes all of this in the first 4 seconds. Then, she gets to work. The medpack from Obi-Wan's belt is a standard Garfield kit. Back to patches, coagulant foam, a small synthesizer unit capable of producing 3 sedative compounds in limited doses. She has used these before. She has used them on Rex, on Fives, on men whose names she learned and then had to let go of. Her hands know the sequence without her having to think about it, which is good, because the part of her that thinks is not functioning cleanly right now. She peels back what is left of Anakin's sleeve. The left arm ends 8 centimeters below the elbow, a clean termination. The lava heat doing the same merciless work as a surgical saw. The stump is blackened, the tissue around it blistered in concentric rings of severity, and the only reason he is not bleeding out on the floor of a diplomat's cargo hold is that the temperature of the lava bank was high enough to cauterize as it destroyed. She does not let herself think about what that means. She reaches for the coagulant foam. Behind her, Obi-Wan works in silence. He has Anakin's head in his lap, a position she would not have predicted from the man who stood on the slope and called his brother a lost cause, and he is doing something precise and unpleasant with the medpac's tracheal kit. A thin, flexible tube and a small hand pump. His movements economical and certain. Field medic training. She had forgotten he had it. The order made sure every general in the Guard did, because the Republic asked them to fill roles the Republic didn't have enough bodies for, and the order said yes, and the generals learned to manage airways in burning buildings and aboard ships that were coming apart around them. Anakin's breathing changes when Obi-Wan finishes. Still ragged, still wrong, but the terrible wet obstruction in it eases, and the rhythm steadies into something that might, under optimistic interpretation, be called sustainable. Obi-Wan sits back. His hands are shaking. He puts them flat against his thighs and they stop. The yacht's autopilot holds their heading. She set it from the cockpit before coming back here. Polis Massa. The only medical installation within range that isn't crawling with Imperial intelligence yet. 11 hours. She calculated it without a chart because the number was already in her head from the mission briefing she read 4 days ago, on a ship that felt like a different lifetime. 11 hours. She starts on the back to patches. Anakin wakes up at the 2-hour mark. Not gradually. Not the slow surfacing of a man climbing out of sedation. He goes from unconscious to vertical in a single violent motion, or tries to. His body remembers it has no leverage before his mind does, and the attempt becomes a full-body spasm that nearly launches him off the improvised pallet she made from seat cushions. She catches him, both hands, center of mass, before he can hit the wall. Stop. She says it the way she used to say it in the field, flat and absolute. Anakin, stop moving. His eyes find her face. They are still yellow. Less than before, the irises cycling at the edges, brown trying to reassert itself against the amber, but yellow enough that she has to decide, in the space of half a second, not to flinch. She doesn't flinch. You're on a ship, she says. We're taking you somewhere they can help you. You're not going to move until we get there. Who? His voice is a wreck. The tracheal intervention saved his airway but could not undo 2 hours of superheated gas damage, and the word comes out as a single scorched syllable, barely recognizable as speech. Me and Obi-Wan. The change in his face is immediate and total. The brown at the edges of his irises retreats. The hand that still functions, the mechanical right, the one she has known since she was 14 years old, comes up fast, and she catches the wrist, and holds it. Don't, she says. He left me. 3 words. Each one separate, each one carrying the weight of everything the sedative hasn't touched. He left me on the bank. He's here now. He left me burning. She doesn't answer that. Because it is true, and she has no framework yet for what to do with its truth, and she has learned from 3 years in a war, from every conversation she had to have in a medbay with someone whose injury she couldn't fix, that some statements are not invitations to argue. They are facts that need to be heard. She holds his wrist, and she lets him say it again, softer the second time, the rage dropping at the edges into something rawer and more dangerous. He left me burning. The mechanical hand stops straining against her grip. In the forward corner of the hold, Obi-Wan has not moved. He is seated against the bulkhead with his knees drawn up, and his eyes fixed on the middle distance between himself and the two of them. His face is the face he presented on the slope, the granite, the serenity, the fracture running through both that he will not acknowledge. but his hands are flat on his thighs again, and she can see, from this angle, that the pressure he is applying to his own legs is the only thing keeping them still. Anakin does not look at him. She does not make him. At the 4-hour mark, she finds Obi-Wan in the cockpit. He is not piloting. The autopilot is engaged. He is simply sitting in the co-pilot's chair with his forearms on the console and his head bent. And the posture is so completely unlike him that she stops in the doorway. His burns will need grafting, he says, without looking up. The synth skin patches are a stopgap. They won't hold past 12 hours. I know. Polis Massa's surgical droids are rated for trauma reconstruction. I checked the manifest before we left Coruscant. He pauses. I checked it before I went to Mustafar. I wanted to know what was available if. He stops. She waits. If he was still alive, he finishes. She crosses the cockpit and takes the pilot's chair. The viewport shows hyperspace in its standard configuration. Blue-white tunnel, no visual reference points, nothing to orient herself by except the instruments. He hates you right now, she says. Yes, that might not change. I know, and you're still here. He lifts his head. The fracture in his composure is more visible from the front than it was from a distance. The redness at the corners of his eyes, the particular tightness around his mouth that she has seen on soldiers who have been holding a position for too long and have stopped believing relief is coming. You called him my brother, Obi-Wan says. He is. He tried to kill you. 20 minutes after you pulled him off a lava bank, he tried to. He's in shock, and he's been handed to the dark side by someone who's been working on him for years. She keeps her voice level. He tried. He didn't. Obi-Wan looks at her for a long moment. Something behind his eyes moves, rearranges itself into a shape she doesn't have a name for yet. You are reckless, he says. You keep saying that like it's a criticism. Anakin does not sleep again. She checks on him at the 6-hour mark, and he is upright against the cargo wall, his mechanical hand resting palm up on the deck, studying it with an expression she cannot read. He does not look up when she enters. She sits across from him and does not speak, and for 40 minutes they share the hold in silence. The kind of silence that is not comfortable and is not hostile but is, perhaps, the only honest thing either of them has access to right now. At some point he says, without looking up from the hand, she's gone. Ahsoka does not ask who. Yes, she says. The mechanical fingers close. Open, close again. Then there's nothing left, he says. She watches the hand. The precision of its movement. The way it operates with a fidelity the organic original never quite had. Each joint exact. Each action deliberate. A piece of craftsmanship built to last longer than the man wearing it. There are 2 things left, she says. He doesn't ask. She doesn't tell him. Not yet. Not on a ship in hyperspace. 11 hours from the moment anything can begin to be different. Some information needs ground beneath it before it can be given. She stays in the hold until his eyes close. Polis Massa hangs in the asteroid belt like a held breath. The station's exterior is all gray utility, docking clamps, sensor arrays, the functional ugliness of a facility built for purpose rather than permanence. Inside, the corridors are narrow and cold, and smell of recycled air and antiseptic, the lighting a flat clinical white that turns everyone's skin the same pale shade of survival. The medical droids move without sound, their photoreceptors tracking each new arrival with the calm indifference of machines that have seen everything and categorized it all. Ahsoka has been here before. Once, a supply run during the war, nothing significant. She remembers thinking it was the loneliest place she had ever been. She thinks that again now, pushing Anakin's repulsor gurney through the intake corridor while a medical droid takes his vitals with brisk mechanical efficiency, and she answers questions she doesn't have complete answers to. Allergies. Prior surgical history. Current medications. She fills the gaps with educated guesses, and the droid accepts them without comment, and she does not let herself think about what the readouts on the gurney's display mean, because she is not a doctor, and the numbers are bad, and there is nothing she can do about the numbers right now. Obi-Wan walks behind them. He has said 11 words since the cockpit conversation. She has counted. They take Anakin into surgery at 0340 station time. The door closes. She stands in the corridor outside it for a moment that has no specific length, looking at the closed door, and then she finds a chair bolted to the wall 6 meters away and she sits in it, and she puts her face in her hands and she stays there until the shaking stops. It takes longer than she expects. Her montrals ache, the heat exposure on the lava bank, the tissue still registering protest hours after the fact, and her throat is bruised in a ring of finger-shaped pressure that she has been not thinking about since it happened. And she is so tired that the tiredness has gone past feeling and become simply a fact about her. Like her height. Like her markings. She breathes. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. The Force is still wrong. Has been wrong since Coruscant, like trying to navigate by a star that has shifted 3 degrees from where the charts say it should be. She does not know yet if it will correct itself. She suspects it won't. She suspects this is just what the Force feels like now, and they will all have to learn to read it differently. Obi-Wan sits in the chair beside her. Neither of them speaks for a long time. Then he says quietly, "She was pregnant." Ahsoka lifts her head. "Padmé, yes." He pauses. "I didn't know until we arrived." The intake droids ran a full bioscan on the senator when Bail brought her in. His voice is careful, the way a man's voice is careful when he is handling something that will break if he grips it wrong. She's in the adjacent suite. The droids say the pregnancy is at term, but her life signs are. He stops. Starts again. They don't know what's wrong. They're calling it a loss of the will to live. The corridor hums around them. Somewhere deeper in the station, a droid moves past an intersecting hallway. The sound fades. He doesn't know, Ahsoka says. No, you're not going to tell him tonight. It is not a question. Obi-Wan looks at her, and for a moment she sees the argument forming, the Jedi rationale, the careful calculation of what information serves the recovery and what destabilizes it, and then she sees him decide not to make it. No, he says. Not tonight. Padmé Amidala dies at 0412. Not before. At 0408 a medical droid comes to the corridor where Ahsoka is standing. She stood up 20 minutes ago, couldn't keep sitting, and says that the senator is asking for her. Not for Obi-Wan. Not for Bail, who is somewhere on the station, pacing a different hallway. For Ahsoka. She goes in. The room is small and very white. Padmé is propped against the bed's incline, and the woman in that bed is and is not the woman Ahsoka knew. Smaller. Somehow. Which doesn't make physical sense given the pregnancy, but grief does something to a person's apparent size. Her eyes are open. They are still the sharpest thing about her. You were with him, Padmé says. Yes, is he alive? Yes. Something moves through Padmé's face. Not relief, exactly. Something more complicated than relief. Something that has relief inside it alongside pain and fury, and a love so enormous it has apparently been slowly destroying her from the inside out. He's in surgery, Ahsoka says. He's going to. She stops. Chooses accuracy over comfort. They're doing everything they can. That's not what I asked. He's alive, Ahsoka says again. Right now, he's alive. Padmé looks at her for a long moment. The monitors beside the bed track something that Ahsoka cannot interpret clinically but can feel. A diminishment, slow and steady, the kind that doesn't announce itself. There are 2 of them, Padmé says. Ahsoka goes still. The droids told me. 2, a breath. I always thought. I don't know what I thought. That we'd have time to figure out names. That he'd be there. Her hand moves to her abdomen, a gesture so automatic it's clearly been happening for months without her awareness. He was going to be there. He still can be, Ahsoka says. And she means it, which surprises her. She did not know until this moment that she believed it. Padmé studies her. You mean that? I pulled him off a lava bank. I don't do things I don't mean. The ghost of something crosses Padmé's face. Not quite a smile. The memory of one. Promise me, she says. The word lands with a weight that Ahsoka recognizes, the weight of a request that is also a transfer of responsibility, that is also a woman who knows she is running out of time choosing where to place what she can no longer carry herself. Ahsoka takes her hand. I promise, she says. The twins arrive at 0411 and 0412, respectively. The birth is swift and medical, and conducted entirely by droids, which is the most polis massa thing possible, and Ahsoka is present for it in the way that you are present for things that happen while you are already in the room. Not as a participant, not as a witness exactly, but as someone the moment simply includes without asking. She holds Padmé's hand through the last of it. The grip tightens twice and then releases, and in the release there is something she will only understand later. The boy comes first. Round-faced, furious about the cold, vocal about it immediately. The girl comes second. Quieter, eyes already open, or trying to be, the light too much. The face scrunching against it with an expression of such specific, personal objection that Ahsoka almost laughs despite everything. Padmé sees them both, holds them for 4 minutes, names them. Luke, Leia, at 0412, the monitors change their tone. Ahsoka walks out of the room carrying nothing but a promise and the memory of 2 names, and she finds Obi-Wan in the corridor and she tells him. And she watches him take it, watches him perform the absorption of it. The terrible Jedi architecture of processing catastrophic loss without letting it land on his face, and she thinks, not for the first time and not for the last, this is what the Order built. And the Order is gone, and he is still doing it, because it's the only tool he has. He can't know yet, Obi-Wan says. I know, not until he's stable. Not until, Obi-Wan. She says it quietly. I know. He nods. Once, his jaw is tight. Down the corridor, the surgical suite door is still closed. Behind it, the droids are doing what droids do. Precise, tireless, indifferent to anything beyond the immediate biological problem. Saving a life that does not yet know what it has lost. She finds her chair again. She sits. She thinks about a promise made in a white room to a woman who needed somewhere to put it, and she decides, not dramatically, not with ceremony, just as a fact she is adding to her own internal inventory, that she will be the kind of person who keeps it. Whatever that costs. Whatever it looks like, she will keep it. Tatooine arrives like a punishment. The planet fills the viewport in shades of amber and ochre, 2 suns hanging above it with the patient indifference of things that have been burning longer than anything alive can remember. From orbit it looks simple, austere, the kind of world that doesn't offer itself. It simply exists, and if you land on it you survive on its terms or you don't. Obi-Wan chose it. She didn't argue. The logic was sound and she hated that it was sound. Remote, uncharted in Imperial registries, the Lars homestead available through Bail's quiet intermediary work, the kind of place that doesn't appear in anyone's operational planning, because no one with options goes there voluntarily. They land at dusk, the twin shadows of the transport stretching long across the sand. The homestead is 3 rooms and a moisture farm, and the particular silence of a place that has never had enough of anything. Owen Lars meets them at the door with the face of a man who was told this was coming and has spent the intervening days deciding how he feels about it, and has not finished deciding. His wife Beru stands slightly behind him, not from timidity, Ahsoka reads immediately, but from the tactical instinct of a woman who takes the measure of a situation before she steps into it. Owen looks at Anakin. Anakin looks back at him from the repulsor chair. The surgical team at Polis Massa provided it as a stopgap until the prosthetic fittings are complete, which will be weeks. Which is a fact Anakin has been informed of and has not responded to in any way that resembles acceptance. His face in the dusklight is a map of what Mustafar did to him. The left side still raw under the synth skin patches, the scarring already setting into its permanent topography. The eyes, brown again, fully, the yellow gone since the 3rd day of surgery, carrying something that doesn't have a clean name. Not rage, not grief, something that sits beneath both, and feeds them. Brother, Owen says finally. The word is careful. Not warm, not cold. An acknowledgement. Anakin says nothing. Beru steps forward. She takes in the chair, the patches, the mechanical hand resting on the armrest, all of it, with a directness that Ahsoka respects immediately. There's food, she says. Come inside. They establish a rhythm in the first week the way you establish a rhythm in a crisis, not by planning it but by surviving the same 24 hours enough times that the pattern hardens into routine. Obi-Wan takes the Eastern storage room, converted with minimal intervention into something that functions as living quarters if you don't look at it too critically. He meditates at dawn. He does not discuss what he finds there. Ahsoka takes the room adjacent to Anakin's, because someone needs to be close, and she has already decided that someone is her. She sleeps in 4-hour intervals. She has slept in 4-hour intervals since she was a Padawan on her first campaign, and she is aware this is not healthy, and she has no current mechanism for changing it. Anakin does not sleep, or sleeps in fragments so brief they barely register. 2 hours here, 40 minutes there, the rest of the night spent in whatever configuration his body can find that doesn't press damaged tissue against a surface. She hears him through the wall. The particular silence of a man who is awake and knows you can hear him, and has decided not to give you the satisfaction of acknowledging it. On the 4th night she stops pretending she can't hear it and goes in. He is sitting upright on the sleeping pallet, mechanical hand on his knee, the other side of him, the left, the arm that ends, held close to his body in the involuntary protective posture she has watched him adopt without apparent awareness. The room is dark. She doesn't turn on the light. She sits on the floor with her back against the wall and she says nothing. After a while he says, "Go away, Ahsoka." No, that wasn't a suggestion. I know what it was. Silence, the homestead settles around them. The particular creaks of a structure designed to withstand temperature differentials that would split ordinary materials, expanding and contracting with the desert night. I can feel it, he says. He is not looking at her. The dark side. It's not. It didn't leave just because the yellow left my eyes. It's still there. Like something that moved in while you were gone and rearranged the furniture, and now you can't find anything in the dark. She doesn't answer immediately, because the answer matters, and she only has one shot at whether he hears it or closes the door on it. I know, she says. You don't. I felt it on Mortis. She keeps her voice level. For about 4 hours, I was fully in it. I remember what the furniture looks like. He looks at her then. It is the first time since Mustafar that he has looked at her without the particular focus of a man assessing a threat. That was temporary, he says. So is this. You don't know that. No, she says. I don't. But you're talking to me, which means some part of you thinks it might be true. He looks away again. The mechanical hand opens and closes against his knee. There were 2 things, he says. You said that. On the ship. A pause. What were they? She has been waiting for this question. She has also been dreading it, because the answer requires her to tell him something Obi-Wan has been arguing she should wait longer on, that the timing is wrong, that he needs more stability before, but she looks at him in this dark room. At the exhaustion and the damage and the dark side residue he is carrying like a second skin he cannot shed, and she makes the same calculation she made on the lava bank. He needs something to hold on to more than he needs to be protected from the truth. A boy and a girl, she says. They're alive. They're safe. The room changes. Not a sound, not a movement, just the quality of the air shifting, the way it shifts before a storm or after one, and she watches something happen behind Anakin's eyes that she has no reference for, because she has never seen it before. The dark side residue that lives in the set of his jaw and the tension across his shoulders does not vanish. But it recoils, slightly, like something that encountered a boundary it wasn't expecting. Where? He says. Safe, that's all I can tell you right now. Ahsoka, when you're stable. She meets his eyes. That's not a punishment. That's not me deciding you don't deserve to know. It's me asking you to give me something to work with, because right now, you can't protect them. And if you know where they are and you can't protect them, and something reaches into your head through the dark side and finds that information, nothing is reaching into my head. Palpatine trained you for 20 years. She says it quietly, without accusation. He knows how you think. He knows every frequency you operate on. I am not willing to risk 2 children on the assumption that he can't find a door he helped build. The silence that follows is the longest one yet. She does not fill it. Anakin's jaw works. The mechanical hand has gone still on his knee, not relaxed, but still, which is different. She watches him do the calculation she is asking him to do, watches him take the protective instinct the dark side has been trying to weaponize and run it through a different logic, and arrive, slowly, at the same answer she did. They're healthy, he says finally. Not a question. A requirement. Yes, both of them. Yes, something goes out of his posture. Not the damage. Not the residue. Just the coiled readiness that has been holding him upright since the surgical suite at Polis Massa, the bracing for impact that a man carries when he has been hit so many times he has stopped believing the next blow isn't already incoming. He leans back against the wall. She stays on the floor. Outside, the desert does what deserts do, expands in the dark. The temperature dropping 30 degrees in the space of an hour, the sand radiating the day's heat upward into a sky that has too many stars and not enough of anything else. In the morning, Obi-Wan will want to discuss protocols, schedules, the careful architecture of a recovery that neither of them knows how to build. They will argue about it, probably. She can already hear the shape of the argument. Tonight, Anakin sleeps. 4 hours. Unbroken, she sits on the floor and listens to him breathe, and decides that is enough for one day. 3 months on Tatooine and the desert has become a kind of jailer. Not cruel, not intentional, simply impassive in the way that only geology can be. The twin suns rising and setting with absolute indifference to what happens beneath them, the sand redistributing itself according to wind patterns that predate the Republic and will outlast the Empire. The homestead's walls hold the heat out during the day and the cold out at night, and do not care, structurally, about anything else. Anakin has not left the perimeter in 11 days. The prosthetics arrived from Polis Massa in a sealed crate on the back of a supply speeder, delivered by a contact of Bales whose name Ahsoka was not given and did not ask for. Standard Republic-grade limb replacements, functional, durable, without the refinement of the custom work Anakin's mechanical arm had before Mustafar. He looked at the crate for a long time before he opened it. When he did, he lifted each component out with the careful attention of a man reading a document he has complicated feelings about, examined the fittings, set them down in a row on the workbench. He fitted them himself. Would not let her help. Would not let Obi-Wan into the room. She heard the sounds of it through the wall, the particular silence of concentrated work punctuated by single sharp sounds she did not catalog, and she sat in the corridor with her back against the door, because she could not leave and he had not asked her to stay, and the middle ground between those two facts was the corridor floor. When he opened the door 2 hours later, both arms were functional. He walked past her without speaking. She got up and followed him to the kitchen, where Beru was making something that smelled of spice and reconstituted protein, and he sat at the table and ate an entire meal for the first time since they landed. She counted it as a victory and told no one. The dark side does not leave. She needs to be honest about that, at least with herself. In the private accounting she keeps because someone has to. It receded after the night she told him about the twins. The coiled quality in his posture loosened by measurable degrees over the following weeks, and twice she caught him in the workshop doing something that looked, from the doorway, adjacent to peaceful, his hands moving with the muscle memory of a mechanic, the focus outward rather than inward. Small mercies. She catalogs those too. But the dark side does not leave. She feels it in the Force when she meditates, a distortion in the space around him, like a bruise on the living current, not spreading, not intensifying, but present. Waiting, the way an old injury waits for cold weather. She has not told Obi-Wan how clearly she can feel it, because Obi-Wan would want to act on the information and there is no action available that would not make it worse. What she has not told Anakin is that she can feel it diminishing. Slowly, incrementally, the way a tide goes out, not dramatically, not all at once, but measurably. If you know where the waterline was yesterday. She knows where the waterline was yesterday. She is choosing to let him find that out for himself. The argument happens on a Thursday. She knows it is Thursday because Beru marks the days on a small calendar mounted beside the kitchen doorway. a habit from a life that required tracking moisture evaporator cycles and supply schedules, the domestic infrastructure of survival. And Ahsoka has started checking it in the mornings the way she used to check mission briefings. Obi-Wan finds her in the eastern courtyard at midday. He needs structure, he says, without preamble. This is a thing she has learned about him in 3 months. He does not build toward difficult conversations. He arrives at them directly, as if the approach itself is a courtesy he is sparing you. He needs time, she says. He's had 3 months. He's had 3 months after 20 years of systematic psychological dismantling by a Sith Lord, plus a traumatic injury that would have killed anyone without his connection to the Force, plus the loss of... She stops. Resets. Time is not the same unit for everyone. Obi-Wan's jaw tightens. I'm not suggesting we rush him. I'm suggesting that directionlessness is its own danger. The dark side feeds on... I know what it feeds on. Then you know that without something to anchor him, he has an anchor. She faces him fully. The courtyard is small, and the sun is directly overhead, and there is nowhere comfortable to stand. He knows about the twins. He has that. It's working. He hasn't asked about them since you told him. He asks every day. Obi-Wan goes quiet. Not out loud, she says. But every morning he goes to the workshop before either of us is up. And every morning when I check, whatever he's building has gotten more careful, more precise. He's building things that will last. She pauses. He's building things a father would build. He just doesn't know that's what he's doing yet. Obi-Wan looks at her for a long moment. Something moves behind his eyes. Not agreement. Not yet. But the beginning of a reassessment. You're more patient than I expected, he says. You're less than I did, she replies. It is not an insult. He receives it as what it is. An observation. From someone who knew him only through his apprentice's stories before this month. Finding the gap between the legend and the man. He doesn't flinch from it. She respects that. I left him on that bank, Obi-Wan says. The granite is still there in his voice, but there is something beneath it now, something that has been pressing upward against the surface for 3 months and is beginning to find gaps. Every time I look at him, I am aware that I left him there, that the instinct to leave him, to call it finished, to let it be the end, came easily, that it came before the grief did. He stops. That is not something I know how to carry inside a Jedi framework. The framework says it was correct. And I cannot. Another stop. Longer I cannot make those two things sit in the same room. She has not heard him say this before. She has suspected it, has read it in the 11 words a day and the rigid morning meditations and the way he positions himself in rooms, always slightly outside the family unit's natural geometry, observer rather than member. But she has not heard him say it. Then stop trying to make them sit in the same room, she says. Let one of them be wrong. He looks at her. The framework, she says. Let the framework be wrong. Just once. Just about this. Anakin is in the workshop when she checks at midday. He does not hear her come in, or hears her and has decided not to acknowledge her, which is also possible and which she has learned to leave alone. He is bent over the workbench, both prosthetic hands moving with a steadiness she would not have predicted 6 weeks ago. Assembling something small and intricate from components she cannot immediately identify. She looks closer. A toy. Articulated. A small figure with moving joints, built from salvaged speeder parts and moisture evaporator couplings, the scale suggesting it was designed for hands much smaller than any adult's. The craftsmanship is, she does not have a better word for it, loving. The kind of attention that goes into something made for a specific person, for a specific pair of hands, with the maker holding those hands in mind through every joint and every fitting. She doesn't say anything. He doesn't offer an explanation. She looks at the workbench surface and counts 4 more partially completed figures lined up near the wall, each different. Each at a different stage of construction. A small fleet of them. Built in secret. In the early mornings. By a man who has not asked again about 2 children he has never seen. Because asking makes them real. And real things can be taken away. She leaves him to it. In the corridor outside the workshop, she stops and closes her eyes and reaches into the Force and checks the waterline. Lower than yesterday. She keeps walking. The twins arrive on a Tuesday. Beru marks it on the calendar with a different color, not the daily utility mark, but something deliberate, a small star drawn in the margin that Ahsoka notices and does not mention. Bail Organa's transport sets down 2 kilometers from the homestead at dawn, and Ahsoka walks out to meet it alone because Obi-Wan suggested it, and for once she agreed with him without argument. Bail looks tired. The kind of tired that has been accumulating for months, and has stopped being a temporary condition and started being a feature of the face. He grips her arm at the ramp and says, quietly, "How is he?" And she says, "Alive, getting there." And he nods like that as both less and more than he was hoping for. The twins are asleep. She looks at them for a long moment in the transport's dim interior, 2 small people wrapped in the practical anonymity of plain cloth. Nothing about them that announces what they are or what they carry, or what has already been sacrificed to get them to this Tuesday morning in the middle of a desert. Luke sleeps with his fists closed. Leia sleeps with her eyes almost open, the lids not quite meeting, as if even unconscious she is reserving the right to check. Ahsoka picks up Luke. Bail takes Leia. They walk back across the sand in the early light. She does not tell Anakin they are coming. She has thought about this, revisited the decision at least a dozen times across the previous week, argued it with herself and against herself, and arrived back at the same place every time. A warning gives him time to build walls. Walls are what he is best at, has always been best at. The architecture of self-protection so deeply embedded, she is not sure he knows he is doing it half the time. What she needs, what the moment needs, is for him to encounter this fact before his defenses have a chance to organize themselves around it. She is aware this is a risk. She takes it anyway. Obi-Wan is in the kitchen with Beru when she comes through the door, which means he sees her face and understands immediately. He goes very still. Not the performed stillness of Jedi composure, the genuine kind. The kind that happens when a person's processing exceeds their capacity for visible reaction. "Where is he?" she says. "Workshop," Obi-Wan says. She shifts Luke against her shoulder and walks down the corridor and does not look back. The workshop door is open. Anakin is at the bench, both prosthetic hands occupied, head down, the posture of concentrated work that she has come to recognize as the closest thing to peace he has found in 3 months. The small figures are still there on the shelf above the bench, 6 of them now, the fleet grown by 2 since she last counted. She stands in the doorway with Luke against her shoulder, and she waits. He registers her after a moment, looks up with the automatic assessment of a man who monitors exits and entrances regardless of context. He sees her face first. Then he sees what she is holding. His hands stop. She watches him take it, watches the information travel from his eyes through whatever processing happens in the space behind them. The same space that used to calculate hyperspace jumps and combat trajectories, and is now doing something entirely different with the weight of a sleeping child, and the particular way that child's fist is curled against her shoulder. She crosses the workshop. She does not ask. She simply holds Luke out, the transfer of weight gentle and deliberate, and Anakin's arms come up, mechanical and organic alike, the prosthetic left and the prosthetic right, both of them, with a reflexive, unthinking steadiness that has nothing to do with training. Luke does not wake. He simply resettles, the small fist uncurling slightly against Anakin's chest, and goes on sleeping with the absolute confidence of someone who has never had reason to doubt that whoever is holding them will hold them correctly. Anakin does not move. For a long moment he simply stands there, Luke against his chest, both prosthetic hands arranged with a carefulness that is almost painful to watch. The care of someone who is terrified of the thing they are holding, not because they want to harm it, but because they cannot afford to be the reason it gets hurt. Then, from the corridor, small feet on stone. Nobody planned for Leia. Bail had her. Bail was in the kitchen. The kitchen is on the other side of the homestead, and the workshop is at the end of a corridor with a closed. She was certain she heard it latch, a closed gate at the near end, and 3-year-olds do not unlatch gates, except apparently this one does. Leia Organa comes through the workshop door with the purposeful velocity of someone who spotted an interesting situation and made a unilateral decision to investigate it. She is small and dark-haired, and her eyes, when they find Anakin, have the particular quality of looking at something that is not frightening, because she has not yet been told it should be. Anakin feels her before he sees her. Ahsoka watches it happen. The dark side residue she has been monitoring for 3 months flares. A single sharp spike of threat response, the reflex of something that has learned to interpret unexpected approaches as danger. The air in the workshop changes. The tools on the bench rattle, a percussive tremor moving through the metal surfaces as the Force answers the fear before the man can stop it. For one moment, one genuine gut-punch moment, the space between Leia and the far wall closes in Ahsoka's perception to a very small distance. Leia does not stop. She walks through the fear the way she walked through the workshop door, without acknowledgement, without slowing, because it does not fit into her current operational framework, which is, there is a person in this room, the person is holding her brother. She would like to be closer to both of these facts. She stops at Anakin's knee. She looks up at him. She reaches out and puts her hand on his prosthetic left, the mechanical one. The one she has no way of knowing is not the hand he was born with. And she holds on with the grip of a child who has chosen something and intends to keep it. The workshop goes quiet. The tools stop rattling. Ahsoka watches the dark side residue she has been monitoring for 3 months, the bruise on the living current, the tide mark she has been checking every day, the waterline, watches it not recede but fracture, not gradually. All at once the way ice fractures, a single crack propagating from a single point of contact outward in every direction simultaneously. Anakin folds, not metaphor. His knees give, controlled, the prosthetics taking the weight without damage, but the decision is not tactical. It is not a choice. It is a man whose structural load-bearing finally meets something it cannot carry. He goes down to the floor of the workshop with Luke still against his chest, and Leia still holding his hand, and the sound that comes out of him is not the sound she heard on the lava bank, not rage, not pain exactly. It is the sound of pressure venting, years of it. The Sith architecture built on grief and betrayal, and the deliberate isolation of a man from everything that might remind him he was once something other than a weapon. It does not survive Leia's hand. Ahsoka goes down with him, one hand on his back, and she does not speak because there is nothing to say, and Luke wakes up at some point in the middle of it and does not cry. Simply looks at the face above him with the calm assessment of someone encountering a new datum, and filing it without alarm. She does not know how long it lasts. Obi-Wan arrives at some point that is not immediately or eventually, but somewhere in the space between. He stops in the doorway. She does not look up. She hears him take in what is on the floor of the workshop, Anakin, both children. Her hand on his back, the tools still and the air clean for the first time since they landed, and she hears him make, in the back of his throat, a sound that is too small to have a name. He does not come in. He sits down in the corridor outside the open door, his back against the wall, and he stays there. The 4 of them. The twins. The corridor. The homestead holds the shape of them. Outside, the twin suns climb the sky. The desert redistributes itself according to wind patterns that predate the Republic. The calendar on the kitchen wall has a small star in the margin of a Tuesday. Nobody speaks. For once, that is exactly enough. The reconciliation does not announce itself. It arrives the way most important things arrive on Tatooine, quietly, without ceremony, in the middle of something ordinary. Obi-Wan is in the courtyard at dawn, 3 weeks after Tuesday, running the forms he has run every morning since before Ahsoka was born. Not meditation. Movement, the saber katas performed empty-handed, the muscle memory so deep it has become indistinguishable from breathing. She watches him sometimes from the kitchen doorway without announcing herself. Not because she is spying, but because the forms are the only moment in the day when his face does what faces are supposed to do, which is, show what is happening inside. He is on the 3rd kata when Anakin comes out. No announcement. No particular intention visible on his face. He simply walks into the courtyard in the early light, both prosthetic arms at his sides. And he stands at the edge of the space Obi-Wan is moving through and watches. Obi-Wan stops. They look at each other across 4 meters of sand and 3 years of catastrophe, and everything that has been accumulating in the corridor sit, and the kitchen silences and the 11 words a day for 6 months. Anakin sits down on the low wall at the courtyard's edge. Obi-Wan sits across from him. Ahsoka goes back to the kitchen and makes tea for 3. She gives them 40 minutes. Then she brings the tea out and sets it on the wall between them and sits on the ground nearby, close enough to be present, far enough to make clear she is not adjudicating. She has not heard what passed between them in those 40 minutes. She does not need to. The quality of the silence when she returns is different from any silence the homestead has held since they arrived, not the managed distance of 2 people who have agreed not to detonate, but the specific quiet of people who have said the thing and are now sitting with the aftermath of having said it. Obi-Wan's hands are not flat on his thighs. That is how she knows. Anakin takes the tea without looking at it. Obi-Wan takes his and wraps both hands around the cup, and the gesture is so human, so completely without the Jedi architecture he normally operates inside, that she has to look away for a moment. He said. Anakin begins, and then stops, and looks at her with an expression that is working through several things simultaneously. He said, I don't get to decide I'm unforgivable, that it's not mine to take from the people who already. He stops again. His jaw works. Who already gave it. She looks at Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is looking at his tea. He's right, she says. I know he's right. Anakin's voice has the raw quality it carries when the dark side residue is low, less armored, less managed, the edges exposed. That's what makes it hard to argue with. Were you trying to argue with it? A pause. Yes. Did it work? The thing that crosses his face is not quite a smile. It is the memory of one, or the precursor to one, something that exists in the same neighborhood without being the thing itself. No, he says. She drinks her tea. The training begins the following week. Not combat. She is deliberate about that. Deliberate in ways she does not fully explain to Obi-Wan because he would want to discuss the pedagogical framework, and she does not have patience for the pedagogical framework. She has a method, and the method is instinct refined by 3 years of being a general and 6 months of watching a man rebuild himself one morning at a time. She starts with breathing. Specifically, the living force breathing technique she learned from Plo Koon at 13 and quietly kept practicing after the Order expelled her, because it was the one thing the Order gave her that felt genuinely true. 4 counts in. 4 counts out. Feel the current. Don't direct it. The force is whether you are moving through rather than territory you are controlling. The first session lasts 6 minutes before Anakin's concentration fractures. She can feel the dark side residue flare at the edges when he goes too deep, the bruise responding to pressure, and she pulls him out and says, "That's enough for today," and he does not argue, which tells her everything about where he actually is versus where he presents himself as being. The second session lasts 9 minutes. The third, 14, she does not tell him the numbers. He is not building toward a score. He is building toward the ability to sit inside himself without flinching, and the timeline for that is not one she is going to put on a calendar. Obi-Wan adapts. She watches him do it with the same focused attention she used to give to combat analysis, tracking the adjustments, noting where the Jedi framework bends to accommodate what the Jedi framework cannot hold. He stops positioning himself outside the family geometry. It happens incrementally, a chair pulled 6 inches closer at the kitchen table, a morning session with the twins where he is participating rather than supervising, an evening where she comes into the main room and finds him and Anakin sitting in companionable quiet, with Luke asleep between them on the bench, neither of them speaking, both of them simply there. He does not announce that he has changed his mind about anything. She does not require him to. One afternoon he finds her in the eastern courtyard while the twins are napping and Anakin is in the workshop, and he says, without preamble, "You were right that detachment without love is just abandonment given better framing." She looks at him. "Did that cost you?" "Considerably good," she says. "Means you mean it." He almost smiles. "You're very difficult." "I learned from difficult people." He does mean it. She is certain of that. The man who sits with Anakin in the evening is not performing presence. He is present. The distinction visible in every line of him. the serenity no longer a surface held against the current, but something that has been taken down and replaced with something quieter and less architecturally rigid. It suits him better. She thinks he knows that, and she thinks knowing it costs him too. The recognition that the version of himself he maintained for decades was partly armor he built against grief, and partly something the Order asked him to be that was not entirely him. She does not say any of this. Some things are better left to be discovered privately. 6 months after Tuesday. Luke and Leia are almost 4, will be 4 in 2 weeks, a fact that Beru has been noting on the calendar with increasing frequency. They move through the homestead with the absolute territorial confidence of children who have decided a place belongs to them, which in practical terms means everything below knee height is a navigational hazard, and any adult sitting on the floor is a climbing structure by default. Anakin has become, without announcement and without apparent decision, entirely comfortable with being a climbing structure. She watches it happen at dinner one evening, Leia installed in his lap working her way methodically through a bowl of food, Luke beside him engaged in a detailed explanation of something he saw in the courtyard that morning, the explanation requiring significant gestural support and several dramatic pauses for emphasis. Anakin is listening to Luke with the focused attention she recognizes from mission briefings, not the performed interest of an adult humoring a child, but genuine engagement, the active tracking of a man who finds the source material interesting. He catches her watching. She does not look away. He looks down at Leia's dark head in his lap, and something in his face rearranges itself into a configuration she has not seen before. Not the absence of pain. The pain is still there, will probably always be a feature of the landscape. But pain with something growing alongside it, the way things grow in difficult soil, having found water somewhere below the surface where you wouldn't expect it. She thinks, this is what Padmé put in my hands on that white table. She thinks, this is what a kept promise looks like. After dinner, when the twins have been extracted from the table and redirected towards sleep with the effort that always requires, Anakin finds her in the courtyard. The twin moons are up. Tatooine has no twin moons, but there are 2 bright stars low on the horizon that have become, in the shorthand of the homestead's evening ritual, close enough. Tomorrow, he says. The training. I want to try the deeper current. She looks at him. The dark side residue is there in the Force. Will probably always be there, the old injury responding to weather, but the waterline has not risen in 60 days. Okay, she says. You'll pull me out if I always pull you out. He nods. Looks at the 2 stars. Ahsoka, yes, thank you. A pause. The word is insufficient, and he knows it, and she knows it, and that shared knowledge is, somehow, exactly what makes it sufficient. For the lava bank, for the ship, for all of it. She looks at the 2 stars beside him. Snips, she says. He looks at her. You called me Ahsoka, she says. It's snips. The thing that crosses his face this time is not the memory of a smile or the precursor to one. It is the thing itself. The calendar on the kitchen wall is a different calendar now, the 3rd one since Beru started the practice, the first 2 worn through at the margins from daily marking. This one has small drawings in it. Luke did them, mostly, moisture evaporators, banthas, a recognizable if anatomically approximate rendering of Ahsoka that she discovered one morning and has said nothing about, which is its own form of acknowledgement. The homestead has grown. Not dramatically. A second sleeping room off the eastern corridor, a larger workshop. A shaded courtyard extension that Owen built with Anakin over 2 weeks in the 3rd year, neither of them talking much. Both of them measuring twice and cutting once with the focused mutual respect of men who communicate better through work than words. The evaporators are more numerous. The larder is better stocked. The small signs of a life that has been quietly, persistently insisting on its own continuity. This morning is ordinary. She will think about that later, how completely ordinary it is, right up until it isn't. Beru makes breakfast the way she makes breakfast every morning, the routine so established it runs without conscious attention, the particular sequence of burner, pot, dry goods from the 3rd shelf, the way she hums something tuneless and brief while she works. Luke is already outside. She can hear him at the vaporators. his voice carrying the running commentary he provides to inanimate objects during maintenance work, a habit he inherited from Anakin and has never been told the origin of. Leia is at the kitchen table with a datapad, reading something she found in Obi-Wan's collection. She works through them methodically, has since she was 7, selecting by some internal taxonomy that defies adult prediction. This morning it is a Senate procedural manual from 20 years ago. She is 9. She is taking notes. Anakin is in the workshop. Obi-Wan is on the ridge. He goes there most mornings now, a kilometer east of the homestead. A flat shelf of rock that catches the first sun and has a clean sightline in 3 directions. Ahsoka knows he is not meditating up there, not entirely. She has been up there with him twice, and both times he was looking at the horizon with the eyes of a man who is watching for something he hopes will not come, and believes eventually will. She trusted that instinct. She should have trusted it sooner. She is in the eastern courtyard running the forms, not the Jedi Ketas, her own sequence, the one she assembled across 10 years from the pieces of her training that still fit the person she became after the Order released her, when the Force moves. Not a scream this time, not the going out of a star. A pressure. The specific directional pressure of something approaching that has been shaped for finding. She stops mid-form. Goes inside. Leia, she keeps her voice level. Go get your father. Leia looks up from the Senate procedural manual. She reads Ahsoka's face with the speed she has always had for that particular skill, and she does not ask questions. She is up and moving before Ahsoka reaches the doorway. Good girl. They come in from the north. 3 ships, 2 fighters and a transport. Imperial markings, no attempt at concealment. The concealment phase is over. Whoever is flying these ships has already found what they were looking for and has transitioned from searching to arriving, which means the window between now and contact is measured in minutes rather than hours. Obi-Wan comes off the ridge at a run. She meets him in the courtyard. Inquisitors, he says. How many? The transport holds 8. Could be fewer. He is already moving through contingencies. She can see it in the speed of his eyes, the way he is calculating angles and positions. The fighters are escort, not assault. They want capture, not destruction. The twins. Yes, Owen appears in the homestead doorway with the face of a man who has been waiting for this day for 10 years and has never stopped hoping he was wrong about it. Beru is behind him. Between them Luke, who came in from the Vaporators when Leia went for Anakin, and has been doing the math on the ships overhead with an expression that is trying to be calm and not quite making it. Get them inside, Ahsoka says. Eastern room, the storage section behind the second wall. You know the space. Owen nods. He puts his hand on Luke's shoulder and steers him back through the door. Anakin comes around the south corner of the homestead. He is not carrying a weapon. She notes this, the deliberate absence of it. The choice made in the seconds between Leia finding him and him arriving here. He looks at the ships, and then at her, and then at Obi-Wan, and his face in the morning light is the face she has been watching for 10 years find its way back to itself. Inquisitors, she says. How long? 4 minutes. Maybe 3. He nods once, looks at Obi-Wan. Something passes between them, not words, not the Force exactly, just the compressed communication of 2 people who trained together for a decade and know the weight of each other's silences. Obi-Wan gives a small nod. I'll take the east approach. Anakin says. Ahsoka has the south, Obi-Wan says. I'll hold the courtyard. The Grand Inquisitor is taller than she expected. He comes down the transport ramp with the unhurried certainty of someone who has done this before and found it straightforward every time, his red-tipped lightsaber unlit at his hip, 4 Inquisitors flanking him in the practiced geometry of a unit that trains together. He surveys the homestead with the systematic attention of a man reading terrain, and she watches him note the 3 adults standing in the courtyard and make his assessment. A moisture farm, he says. His voice carries the specific contempt of someone performing contempt rather than feeling it. How very remote. Obi-Wan steps forward. Whatever you're looking for, you won't find it here. I find. The Grand Inquisitor says pleasantly, that people who say that are usually the ones who know exactly where it is. The sabers come up on both sides simultaneously, 4 red blades and 2 blue ones, the chromatic argument of a galaxy that chose a side and is enforcing it. Ahsoka ignites both whites from behind the eastern wall and takes the 2 Inquisitors who break for the flank before they have covered half the distance, driving them back toward the transport with the specific efficiency of someone who is not fighting to win, not yet, but fighting to occupy. She is aware, in the peripheral way she has learned to track Obi-Wan, that he is being pushed. Not badly, but pushed, 2 against 1, the Grand Inquisitor and a second pressing him toward the south wall with the double saber technique that is the Inquisitorius's signature, spinning and grinding, designed to exhaust rather than to cut. She has 4 Inquisitors between her and him. She takes 2 seconds to calculate whether she can cross that geometry. She cannot. She drives her 2 back another 6 meters and feels, in the force, the shape of the courtyard, Obi-Wan against the wall, the pressure increasing, the Grand Inquisitor pulling back to let the second work, conserving himself. A predator with patience. Then the homestead door opens. She does not see it happen. She hears it. A lightsaber ignition. A single clean tone, resonant and distinct, a frequency she has never heard in combat before. Not blue, not red. Something that sits in neither register, the sound of it occupying the courtyard the way a bell occupies a room, filling the space completely before the echo begins to fade. Her 2 Inquisitors stop. She stops. Across the courtyard the Grand Inquisitor turns. Anakin Skywalker stands in the doorway of the homestead in plain robes, with a white blade in his hand, and the morning light catches the blade and distributes it across the courtyard walls in a color that has no precedent in either Order or Empire. His face is still, not the stillness of performed serenity, the stillness of a man who is exactly where he means to be, doing exactly what he means to do, without ambiguity in any direction. The Grand Inquisitor looks at him for a long moment. Something moves behind his eyes. A reclassification. The systematic reassessment of a man who arrived expecting straightforward, and is now somewhere else entirely. Well, he says, the courtyard holds its breath. The white blade does not move. Anakin stands in the doorway, and the light coming off the saber redistributes itself across every surface in the courtyard. The sand, the walls, the faces of the people holding red, and the color it casts is not the color of either side of a war. It is the color of something that does not have a side yet. Something still becoming. Ahsoka watches the Grand Inquisitor process this. She has learned, across 10 years of reading people, that genuine surprise has a physical signature that performance cannot replicate, a fractional delay between the stimulus and the response, the body's processing lag before the trained composure reasserts itself. The Grand Inquisitor has that delay now. Half a second, maybe less. But it is there, and she catalogs it, because in a courtyard with 6 red blades and 2 blue ones and 1 white, half a second is a meaningful unit. He recovers. A white saber, he says. The pleasantness in his voice has been replaced by something more careful. I didn't know there were any left. Anakin steps off the doorstep onto the sand. There's one, he says. She has watched him train for 4 years. Every morning for 4 years, sometimes alongside him, sometimes from the courtyard wall, sometimes from the kitchen doorway with tea going cold in her hand. She has watched him reconstruct the relationship between his body and the force that Mustafar and the dark side and 20 years of systematic corruption interrupted. She knows every note of his movement, the way the prosthetic arms create a slightly different balance point than organic limbs, the compensatory shift in his footwork, the way he solved for it not by mimicking what he used to be, but by building something new from the available materials. She has never seen him in actual combat. Not since before. She is watching it now. He moves into the First Inquisitor with the unhurried precision of a man who has already calculated the outcome and is now executing the calculation. No aggression in it. No fury. The white blade describing clean short arcs that are not about damage, but about displacement, redirecting the spinning double saber without meeting it force against force. The Inquisitor's technique is designed for momentum, for grinding, for the accumulated pressure of rotation that wears an opponent down by making them absorb impact after impact. Anakin does not absorb. He steps. The blade passes. He is somewhere else. The momentum the Inquisitor built goes nowhere and has to be rebuilt. And in the half-second of that rebuilding he closes the distance and ends the exchange with the flat of his blade against the Inquisitor's wrist. A controlled, deliberate non-killing strike that sends the saber into the sand and the Inquisitor to one knee. He steps back. He does not follow it. She sees Obi-Wan, from the corner of her eye, register this. The restraint. The specific, chosen restraint of a man who could have continued, and didn't, not because he lacked the capacity, but because the capacity was not the point. She takes her two. It is not elegant, she is managing angles, and she is one, and they are two, and the math requires her to be in two places, with a precision that costs her a cut across her left forearm that she will not notice until afterward. She drives the first into the courtyard wall with her shoulder, and the second finds a moment of unexpected stillness when his partner goes down, and she uses that moment to remove his saber from the exchange and leave him standing empty-handed and intact. He looks at her. "Run," she says. He runs. The Grand Inquisitor has been watching. This is his tell, she realizes. The patience she read as predatory confidence is also caution. The habit of a man who does not commit until he has seen enough to commit correctly. He has been watching Anakin move, cataloging, revising whatever assessment he arrived with. She can see the revision happening in real time on his face. He ignites the double blade. Anakin moves to meet him in the center of the courtyard, and the two of them settle into the specific gravity of a serious engagement. Not the rapid initial exchange of the lesser Inquisitors, but something slower, more measured, each of them taking the other's measure with every pass. The Grand Inquisitor is skilled. She will say that clearly inside herself because the alternative is underestimating him, and she cannot afford that from where she is standing. He is the best fighter the Inquisitorius has, and the best fighter the Inquisitorius has is something worth being careful about. Anakin is not careful. He is precise, which is different. Careful is reactive. It lives in the spaces between attacks, in the defensive calculation, in the management of risk. Precision is something else. Precision is what you have when you are not afraid of the outcome, not because you are reckless, but because you have made your peace with it, and the peace freed up the processing capacity that fear used to occupy. The Grand Inquisitor spins the double blade. The rotation is impressive, a full horizontal sweep meant to force a jump or a retreat, and Anakin does neither. He steps inside it. The blade passes behind him, and he is already there, inside the guard. The white saber at the Grand Inquisitor's throat. Not through it. At it. The Grand Inquisitor goes very still. The spin dies. The double blade hangs at an angle that has become, in the space of a single step, entirely academic. She is watching Anakin's face. Obi-Wan is watching it too. She can feel him, 2 meters to her left, and the quality of his attention has the same texture as hers, the same focused stillness of people who are witnessing something they have been waiting for without knowing exactly what shape it would arrive in. The white blade does not move. The Grand Inquisitor looks at the man holding it, and she sees him arrive. From the inside out, at a conclusion she cannot hear, but can read in every line of his posture. "You could end this," the Grand Inquisitor says. His voice is different now, the careful tone gone. Something more direct underneath it. "Yes," Anakin says. "But you won't." "No." A beat. The courtyard holds its geometry, 2 Inquisitors down, 2 gone, one standing with a white blade at his throat. The sand holding the footprints of everything that just happened. "Why?" the Grand Inquisitor says. Anakin's answer is not immediate. She thinks he is deciding how much of the truth to give this man. And then she thinks he is deciding to give all of it, because partial truths have always been part of the architecture that built the room he spent a decade climbing out of. "Because I'm not doing this to win a war," Anakin says. "I'm doing this because there are 2 children in that building, and you came for them. The war is your employer's problem. The children are mine." The Grand Inquisitor is quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, he releases the double blade. It falls into the sand. He takes 1 step back, and Anakin lets him, the white saber tracking but not following. The Emperor will send more. The Grand Inquisitor says. I know. More than I brought. I know that too. The Grand Inquisitor looks at him, looks at the homestead, at Obi-Wan, at her, at the sand where his inquisitors are sitting or standing or gone, and he makes a calculation she cannot fully follow, the variables of which she can only partially see. Then he turns and walks to the transport ramp. He stops at the top without turning around. Skywalker, he says. Anakin waits. He thought you were dead. A pause. He'll be very interested to know you aren't. The ramp closes. The transport lifts. She finds Obi-Wan's eyes. He is standing in the center of the courtyard with his saber still lit, and his face doing the thing it does when the granite architecture has been temporarily suspended, everything underneath it visible, the grief and the love, and the long accumulated weight of a decade of daily choosing to stay. He looks at Anakin, and she sees, on his face, the specific expression of a man who was not certain until this moment that the thing he hoped was true actually was. Anakin looks back at him. The white blade goes dark. The homestead door opens and Luke comes through it first, because Luke always comes through doors first, cannot help it. The same quality his father has of moving toward things, rather than away from them. Leia is directly behind him, one hand in Owen's and the other already reaching for Anakin before she has fully assessed the courtyard. Anakin catches her. Over Leia's head he looks at the sky where the transport went, the direction of it, the trajectory, the meaning of what the Grand Inquisitor said at the top of the ramp. The twins safe. The homestead standing. The sand redistributing itself across footprints and fallen sabers, with the impassive patience of geology. He holds his daughter and he looks at the sky and he does not look afraid. For the first time since she pulled him off the lava bank, she cannot feel the dark side residue in the force around him. Not diminished. Gone, the sand takes the morning. Nobody moves for a while after the transport clears the atmosphere. Not from shock. The shock burned off somewhere in the middle of the courtyard exchange, but from the particular stillness that follows sustained danger. The body's assessment period where it checks itself for damage and finds, this time, less than it feared. Ahsoka's forearm has stopped bleeding. Obi-Wan has a bruise forming along his left side where the wall found him. Anakin is unmarked. Luke is the one who breaks it. He walks to the center of the courtyard and picks up the Grand Inquisitor's fallen double saber from the sand and turns it over in his hands with the systematic curiosity of someone conducting an investigation. He is 9 years old and he approaches unfamiliar objects the way he approaches unfamiliar people, directly, without the protective hesitation that experience teaches and he has not yet accumulated enough of to apply consistently. It spins, he says. Put it down, Luke, Obi-Wan says. Luke puts it down. Then he looks at his father. You have a white one. Yes, Anakin says. Why white? Anakin looks at the saber in his hand, looks at it the way she has seen him look at the small figures on the workshop shelf, with the attention of a man examining something he made, and is still deciding what it means. Because it doesn't belong to either side, he says. It's just mine. Luke considers this with the focused gravity he brings to information he intends to keep. Then he nods, once, satisfied, and goes to stand beside his father with the simple territorial instinct of a child who has made a decision about where he belongs. Leia, who has been conducting her own assessment from Anakin's arms, looks at the sky where the transport went. They'll come back, she says. Yes, Ahsoka says. With more. Yes, Leia looks at her father. So we can't stay here. It is not a question. It is a 9-year-old applying sequential logic to available data and arriving at the conclusion before the adults have finished deciding how to frame it, which is, Ahsoka has learned, simply how Leia operates, and always will. No, Anakin says. We can't stay here. Owen takes it quietly. That is the word for it. Quietly. The way Owen Lars has taken most things in the decade she has known him, absorbing the fact of it without drama, his face doing the careful work of a man who knew the answer before he asked the question, and asked anyway, because asking is the honest thing to do. Beru puts her hand over his on the kitchen table, and he turns his palm up and holds it. The farm, he says. We'll be here, Anakin says. The Empire has no reason to come back for a moisture farm. They had no reason to come for it this morning. They came for the children. Anakin meets his brother's eyes across the table. The children won't be here. Owen looks at him for a long moment. The 10 years of it are visible between them. The things that were said, and the things that weren't. The morning Anakin and Owen built the courtyard extension without talking much. The years of the homestead holding the shape of a family that assembled itself around a disaster, and became something real without fully intending to. You'll keep them safe, Owen says. It lands somewhere between a question and a statement and a requirement. Yes, Anakin says. Owen nods. He does not say anything else. Some agreements do not require more words than that. Beru gets up and starts packing food for the journey. She finds Obi-Wan on the ridge at midday. He is standing rather than sitting, which means he heard her coming and decided not to perform the meditation. She stands beside him and they look at the horizon together, the same horizon he has been watching for 10 years. The flat amber line where Tatooine meets its own sky. Bail, she says. I sent the message this morning. He'll meet us at the Polis Massa waypoint. A pause. He's been waiting for this. Longer than we have. The rebellion. The beginning of one. He is quiet for a moment. Anakin and I spoke this morning, before the Inquisitors came. She waits. He said he wants to finish what he tried to do in the Chancellor's office the night everything went wrong. That the dark side interrupted a choice and he intends to complete it. She looks at the horizon. He said something else. Obi-Wan continues. He said the difference between then and now is that then he was trying to save one person. Now he knows you cannot save one person by destroying everyone else, that the math doesn't work, and it never worked. And Palpatine sold him the equation knowing it didn't work, because a man running a broken calculation is a man who needs to keep buying more variables. She is quiet for a long time. He figured that out himself, she says. Yes, not from us. No. Obi-Wan's voice carries something she has not heard in it before. Not pride exactly, but the thing that lives next to pride when the outcome exceeds what you permitted yourself to hope for. Not from us. She looks at the 2 bright stars that will be visible on the horizon in a few hours, when the suns go down. She has looked at them with Anakin enough times that they have become, in her internal geography, coordinates rather than astronomical features, the place you stand when you need to say something that requires open sky above it. I told Padmé I'd keep the promise, she says. The night she died. She asked me and I said yes, and I didn't fully know what yes meant at the time. Obi-Wan is listening. I know what it meant now, she says. It meant this. All of it. The lava bank, and the ship, and the floor of the workshop, and every morning I checked the water line, and every session I pulled him out of when he went too deep. She pauses. It meant the smile. The one he got back. I didn't know that was in the promise. But it was. Obi-Wan looks at her. His face is open in the way it has been learning to be open, the granite not gone, but set aside. Available when needed, no longer the only tool. She would have been glad it was you, he says. Specifically you. Not the order. Not a protocol. You. She does not answer that. Some things are better received in silence. They leave at dusk. The homestead behind them holds the shape of 10 years, the calendar on the kitchen wall with its daily marks and small drawings. The workshop shelf with 6 articulated figures in a row, the courtyard extension built without many words over 2 weeks in the 3rd year. Beru stands in the doorway and does not wave. Because Beru is not a woman who performs the gestures, she simply looks at each of them in turn with the direct, complete attention of someone making sure she has the face right for keeping. Luke looks back twice. Leia does not look back at all, which means she has already oriented herself toward whatever is in front and begun her assessment of it. Bail Organa meets them at the waypoint with 2 ships and the face of a man who has been holding something in trust for a decade, and is now, at last, returning it to the people it belongs to. He looks at Anakin for a long moment. Anakin looks back. Senator, Anakin says. That title is somewhat historical at this point, Bail says. Something in his voice, dry precise, the political intelligence that has been running calculations since the night the Republic ended, carries the warmth of a man who is glad, specifically and personally glad, to be standing in this waypoint having this exchange. Then, bail, Anakin says. Bail, he agrees. The twins have already found the ship's interior and are conducting their independent assessments of it. Luke's voice carries through the open ramp, something about the engine configuration. Leia's does not, which means she is reading something she found, which could be anything, and probably is. Obi-Wan boards first. Then, Anakin. Then she stands at the ramp for a moment alone, and looks at the stars, not the two bright ones on Tatooine's horizon, but the actual stars. The full inventory of them. The galaxy that is going to take a long time to fix, and is going to require more than any of them have yet given, and is going to be, the whole way through, worth it. She thinks of an ash bank, of a lava river 8 meters below a narrow shelf of rock, of the specific costly mechanics of starving a fire of oxygen in short rhythmic pulses while a man tries to kill you and you save his life anyway because the alternative is something you have already decided is not acceptable. She thinks, unconditional love is not a feeling. It is a decision you make on the bank and then keep making, every morning, until the morning it isn't necessary anymore. She thinks, we are not there yet. But we are here. She boards the ship. The ramp closes. The family of the light goes to meet the dark. Together. For the first time. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.